Okay, deforestation is the issue. But compared to, say, some of the issues of carbon that we were discussing, technology transfer, which seems highly complex, from the outside, forest looks fairly straightforward. There you have the forests. We know you shouldn't cut them down for a variety of reasons. Why is it proving so tough to get any sort of agreement on what the world's attitude should be?
Well, I think there's a number of different reasons for that. Of course, there is the continually growing demand for wood products that is not being addressed. That's something that this body is absolutely not addressing at all. And so if you're talking about trying to reduce deforestation without reducing the demand for wood products, you're going down a road that has, no direction. The other problem that this body really has is the actual definition of forests. This UN body has a tendency to, well, not a tendency to, it actually does confuse native forests, these wonderful complex ecosystems of trees, destroy plants and soils and wildlife and birds and all of these things. They confuse that with monoculture industrial tree plantations, which are a single species of tree, sometimes all cloned from the same individual, with no understory plants or very few. Wildlife can't use them most of the time because many times they're non-native trees. They're native to Australia, for example, like eucalyptus. And so they confuse these two things, so that what they're doing is allowing for native forests to be destroyed and be replaced with these industrial tree plantations, and say that that is not deforesting. So that is one huge problem that we're trying to deal with here.
One among many.
One among many, yes.
So is there, what are you suggesting? Because you're here presumably to lobby as well as to talk to people and educate and inform and network. What is it you think? You think the whole approach should be stopped, or that it could be adjusted, tinkering with it at the edges or whatever, or do you think it's just the wrong approach completely?
Well, certainly the definition of forests has to be changed, period. They have to acknowledge that forests are ecosystems and not just trees standing up, because that's what they're doing now, and it's causing huge disasters all over the world. Monoculture tree plantations are displacing local communities, displacing wildlife. They're draining water supplies. They're depleting soils. They're horrible. Forests and allowing them to continue to spread all over the world is just terrible.
Okay, can I ask you, Gustavo, from OECO, is this your concern, or are you more concerned with sort of people in the forest, using the forest around them? I know you are too, but just as a journalist, is that where you're involved?
Yeah, in a way this is correct. I mean, which is what strikes me more here is that we often listen here that delegates and people doing even workshops are saying that stop deforestation is the easiest and cheapest way of addressing climate change now. And I keep asking myself if it's true, because by my experience in Brazil, what I see is like to implement laws and enforce laws on the ground is not cheap and it's not easy. I mean, like, it's such a complex problem. And I truly believe that's something for stopping the negotiation here to go on. Have this mechanism for proposing market mechanisms or fundings for countries. How are you going to implement this on the ground? How do you go into indigenous land or small community land and guarantee that thing's going to work? So there is a lot of in this. So that's my main. It's like, how do you bring these main factors or main vectors or drivers, if you like, to the negotiations? Because we are just looking at the broad sense of deforestation here.
Oh, I spoke to a couple of questions already, so you have to answer them. Well, this is from William Goodman. Well, how about sustainable farming? Sorry, forestry. I'm having difficulty reading that. How about sustainable forestry? Is this, how big, and I can't tell you more. This is the question, so I'll have to ask you to answer it as it stands.
Well, of course, sustainable forestry is wonderful. It's exactly the direction that we need to be moving in. Unfortunately, that's, again, not what they're talking about here. And certainly tree plantations is not sustainable forestry. Sustainable forestry has to include addressing each forest ecosystem in its place in an appropriate way, and again, that's not what they're doing here. But I will get back to the demand side. If we aren't directly addressing the demand for forest products and decreasing that demand quite substantially, we cannot preserve forests. So that is the other part of what we're doing here is saying, we really need to start dealing with the consumption problem.
Are we better off with farmland or monocultured trees?
Oh, well, that's kind of a strange question. But, but basically it's there's a push at the same time that the UN is pushing for this reducing emissions from deforestation. Generation biofuels, or agrofuels as we call them, transport fuel made from trees. And so at this point there is a very big threat that farmland will be transformed into monoculture tree plantations. And already there's a food crisis in the world caused in part because of food-based biofuels. And so now the problem is that biofuel production could put tree plantations, monoculture tree plantations, on farmland and further squeeze food production. In Chile, happening where this is happening. It's a very big problem, but in my estimation, it's not a question of farmland versus monoculture tree plantations. It's a question of forests versus monoculture tree plantations. And if there needs to be a greater demand, a greater supply of wood, if we need more forests, in other words, they should be forests. People should be restoring forests, not planting these green deserts, as they're called in Brazil.
Okay, let me follow that up with another question quickly. What does Anne suggest as an alternative material for construction?
Well, there's a big move in the United States to actually reuse construction materials. In other words, many times when places are ripped down and new things are built, they just throw everything into the landfill. I mean, that's the greatest waste of wood products, is that they go straight into the landfill. So, there's a movement among some people to actually deconstruct old homes, reuse the wood to build new homes, and of course there's all kinds of other ways that we can stop using wood materials. All of these throwaway packages that we have that go straight into the landfill. I think it's 10% of the trees cut on national forests in the United States, for example, go straight into the landfill after they've been made into packaging. So there's huge amounts of wastes of wood products and paper that we could easily cut out and conserve huge amounts of forests in the world.
Okay, here's another one about the negotiations. I have read that issues of trust and distrust are getting in the way of problem solving. I think that means at the conference. Is this true? Do you have any sense of that? Do you think that's true?
It's true. Like one thing on this is, like, when you come to the forest problem specifically, you might say that this deal on forests should not look cheap. When these developed countries come to the idea of offsetting their emissions in forests, the developing countries are just asking, you don't want to do anything. You understand what I mean? Like, I think this is the meaning of the lack of trust here. Like, once you just pushing for offset solutions, you giving a message that you don't want to do anything. So, and we all know by the IPCC report and that the problem is very serious. So, like, we need everybody doing very strong measures, and what we see here in a way is not strong measures being taken. So I understand this question in this way, like the lack of trust being the lack of measures coming out from the developed countries.
So, Anne Peterman of the Global Forest Coalition, do you agree with that the distrust issue here is getting in the way?
Yes, I would say that would be an adequate description of part of what's going on here.